So, here's a new series of videos where I rank every episode of one of the longest running animated shows of all time, The Simpsons. I've been a huge fan of The Simpsons since I was a kid, and I can not only appreciate the show for the impact it has had on animation, and essentially paving the way for adult cartoons like South Park and BoJack Horseman, but also for how great its golden age was. A variety of memorable layered characters, superb satirical commentaries on popular media, iconic catchphrases and quotes, genuinely heartfelt moments, and of course, hilarious layered comedy. And while the show has dipped in quality, and has yet to live up to its golden age, even the later seasons have had their fair share of good episodes. For this ranking, I'm going to be structuring it slightly differently than usual. With most of my movie rankings, I've done worst to best, which I find much easier in that situation, as the movies don't usually follow continuous stories or character arcs. With TV shows, however, I feel it will be easier to talk about them in order of release date, to feel more coherent. In this case, I will finish off with where I would rank them all. So here's my series ranking every episode of The Simpsons, starting with Simpsons roasting on an open fire manages to be both funny and poignant. Seeing Homer try to avoid spilling the beans about not getting his Christmas bonus, and trying to find a way to provide a good Christmas for the family, shows how devoted he is. And as well as delivering great drama, the episode manages to provide a lot of great laughs without muddying the tone, some of my favourite jokes being at the Christmas play at the beginning. The first episode, and honestly, a really good start. While Bart the Genius isn't quite as poignant as Simpsons roasting on an open fire, it's definitely a lot funnier. Some of my favourite comedic moments in the episode are the game of Scrabble at the beginning, and when the family go to an opera performance, where Homer and Bart make each other, and also Lisa, laugh. And speaking of Homer and Bart, I do like the relationship between them in the episode, and I think it has a relatively realistic edge to it. I also like Bart's character arc in the episode, wanting an opportunity to be seen as a genius, but then finding that he enjoyed his old school life a lot more, and confessing to cheating on the test. Really good episode. Homer's Odyssey is a weird one, because I enjoyed rewatching it, but when it finished, I couldn't really think what made it stand out to me, other than how it is interesting to see Homer facing repercussions for his incompetence. And also Black Smithers, I suppose. The episode has pacing issues. While the stuff with Bart at the beginning has good moments, it also takes up too much time considering the episode isn't about him. And maybe dedicating more time to Homer trying to get his job back, and the way he goes around it, would have been better. The episode does have good jokes, but unlike Simpsons roasting on an open fire, when combined with the serious moments, the tone feels slightly unbalanced here. It's a decent episode, but I don't have too much to say really. There's No Disgrace Like Home is strange to watch after watching so many subsequent episodes and seasons, mostly because of how different the characters are to how they would be in later seasons, especially having Homer be the voice of reason. But it is a good episode, and it is heartfelt that Homer is shown to love his family despite getting angry at them. And the scene at the end when they all shock each other during family therapy is quite funny. Not the most timeless episode of the show, by a landslide, but a good episode in the mindset of subsequent episodes and seasons not yet existing. Bart the General is an interesting episode. While the beginning is fine, the rest is actually quite funny and intriguing. I like the idea of a load of school kids going up against a school bully in the style of war movies, as it reminds me of how much I enjoy when films and TV shows take certain premises and make them work in the style of a movie genre. That's the most I can say really. The war parody concept is funny and intriguing, and it makes the episode as a whole a good one. Moaning Lisa is a good episode, and one that manages to give each of the four main characters a chance to shine. The main plotline involves Lisa being depressed, and while Marge initially tries to tell Lisa to smile regardless of how she feels inside, she ultimately sees the negative side to this, and tells her to be herself, which helps Lisa become happier, along with her learning to express herself through music with the help of musician Bleeding Gums Murphy. Despite being a comedy, much of classic Simpsons can also address more serious themes, and do so with dignity. We also get a fun side plot in which Homer tries to beat Bart in a boxing video game, and they do manage to connect it to the main storyline. Though, I do kind of feel bad for Homer at the end. An episode that successfully balances comedy and drama, as you'd expect more serious classic Simpsons episodes to do. The Call of the Simpsons is a pretty funny episode. It doesn't have the same emotional impact as some of my preferred episodes of this season, or even Moaning Lisa, but it is funny, which is what we go to The Simpsons for really. The plotline about Homer being mistaken for Bigfoot is so ridiculous, but also really funny. From Homer falling in the mud and babbling, to the newspaper headings surrounding Marge's input on the situation, to scientists trying to determine whether he is human or not. I think the funniest joke outside of this, and maybe the funniest in the episode, is when Homer gets the family stranded, and when he can't do shit, his echo accidentally reveals this.
I've murdered us all! I've murdered us all! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Don't! Don't!
It's mostly just a funny episode, which, as I stated, is what we watch The Simpsons for. The Telltale Head is an episode that provides an interesting character arc for Bart, and one that a lot of people will identify with, wanting to look cool, but not turning to criminal activity in order to achieve it. While Bart is known as a bad boy in school, he does also have a moral compass. This episode introduced Dolph, Jimbo and Kearney, and I like that they're not just one-dimensional bullies in the episode, initially showing respect for Bart, only to make fun of him when he expresses doubt about the morality of decapitating the statue of Jebediah Springfield. The episode also features some good jokes, particularly Homer listening to the football game in church, which plays in sync with what Reverend Lovejoy is saying, and the Godfather reference with the head of the Jebediah Springfield statue. Overall, a funny and somewhat relatable episode. Life on the Fast Lane takes a darker edge than a lot of Season 1 episodes, but I think it does it better than Homer's Odyssey, primarily in how the episode does find a balance between dark subject matter and good humour. Marge finds herself becoming interested in a seductive bowling instructor, which puts a strain on her marriage with Homer, although her motivations line up given how ignorant Homer was on her birthday. Both Marge and Homer get interesting character arcs, with Homer realising he's been a bad husband and trying to change for the better, and Marge realising that, deep down, her heart lies with Homer, and the final scene where Marge chooses Homer is so good. So it's a really good episode, except for Helen Lovejoy's design. My, what weird eyes you have! Homer's Night Out isn't as funny as other episodes, but I still think it's a good episode. I've heard people say the episode is bad because they perceive the concept of a photo of Homer dancing next to another woman finding its way across town, and Marge accusing Homer of objectifying her, ridiculous. But my interpretation is that this is how it leads to its execution of its anti-sexism message. The photo finds its way across town because all the men are attracted to Princess Kashmir, with the photo even being confiscated from some of the men and boys. And I think the reason Marge perceived Homer dancing next to her as objectification was because he put the dollar bill in her G-string. And it does come to the ending in which Homer tries to teach Bart about not objectifying women, and eventually conveys it on stage, consequently reconciling with Marge. While I do consider it a good episode, I do put it lower on the list, just because I don't find it as funny as other episodes. The Creps of Wrath has good jokes, including when Skinner's mother comes to Springfield Elementary and the boys act innocent. I do think it's a bit too mean-spirited to Bart in the way his adoptive parents treat him, even if this was likely intentional. But the outcome at the end is warranted. I also like to assume that Homer's bad back was healed when Bart agreed to go to France. Only reason I can think of him suddenly jumping off the couch like a motherfucker when hearing it. The show's first dive into a whodidit mystery, in which Krusty is arrested, and Bart enlists the help of Lisa to prove his innocence. I like the build-up to the revelation that it was Sideshow Bob. Kelsey Grammer makes his first appearance as Bob, and showcases a great voice performance, both in the speaking and also singing department. And Bob's motivations as to why he did it make a lot of sense, and you feel sorry for him to some extent. I also like when he says to treat kids as equals and not underestimate their intelligence. This is what I'd like to say to all those who say, "But it's for kids," when I'm explaining the problem with bad kids films or shows. Krusty Gets Busted is a really good episode overall, and the first major appearance of one of the best supporting characters on the show. Some Enchanted Evening is a good episode. It's hard not to mention the episode's famous smooth animation, but it's also not the only thing the episode has going for it. I like Homer's character development in the episode, showing that, despite him being a selfish buffoon at times, he does love Marge, and gives her a night at a restaurant and motel. It also manages to have a hilarious ending in which Homer unknowingly helps Mrs. Botts escape the police, and lies about fighting her to the media. But it does also have a heartwarming scene of Marge consoling Homer over his ability to raise 3 kids who can hogtie a criminal. Good episode. So overall, a good start to the series. Will Season 2 follow suit? Well, not one of the funniest episodes of The Simpsons, but one that nonetheless manages to blend humour and emotion brilliantly. Bart discovers that he is failing class, and is given one more chance to improve his grades, otherwise he'll have to repeat the 4th grade. Which, funnily enough, all the students have done, given that over 30 years later, they're still in the 4th grade. Bart ultimately decides to step up his game, but he discovers that he has difficulty focusing, even when he tries hard to revise, and even prays to God for things to work out. With a blizzard taking place, Lisa advises Bart to stay home and revise while everyone else has fun, ultimately being confined to the darkness of a basement while everyone else is outside in the brightness of the town. However, despite his best efforts, he fails by 1 mark, and what we get is one of the saddest and most relatable moments in the show, Bart practically breaking down as, despite his best efforts, he failed, saying that you can do your best and still not necessarily succeed, which is ultimately a hard but important thing to understand. Though of course, it does have a happier outcome, and Bart manages to succeed, saying,
"But part of this D- belongs to God."
a fantastic episode that blends humour and heart brilliantly, and is very likely to end up near the top of the final list. Simpson and Delilah is a good episode. While it's not as funny or poignant as other episodes, it has good moments. I think Carl is an interesting character, and Harvey Fierstein brings a lot to him, both vocally and also behind the scenes in terms of his character design. I like how on Homer and Marge's wedding anniversary, Carl hires a singer to perform "You Are So Beautiful" to Marge, and then when Marge sings the song to console Homer at the end of the episode. It's probably my favourite moment in the episode. I also like how the episode shows some humanity in Mr. Burns when he sympathises with Homer's male pattern baldness and gives him his old job back. It's just a good episode. See it for what it is. Treehouse of Horror, the first Halloween episode of The Simpsons. While I can commend this episode for paving the way for genuinely hilarious Halloween episodes, I don't think this one is particularly strong as a whole, but still good. Hungry Are the Damned is my favourite of the 3 segments, as it has a lot of funny jokes to it, especially the How to Cook for Humans scene and the references to HBO and Pong, as well as an interesting shot of Homer and Marge's heads over the served plates to indicate the aliens will cook and serve them like this. Bad Dream House and The Raven are funny segments. That's about it. And James Earl Jones is entertaining in his vocal roles across all 3 segments. A good episode, but ultimately one that is more groundbreaking than it is outstanding. 2 Cars in Every Garage and 3 Eyes on Every Fish is a funny episode. I like its themes of environmentalism and its satirical commentary on politics, as well as the way Marge foils Mr. Burns at the end. Good episode overall. Dawn Sonoma is a good episode with some funny moments, particularly Marge trying to get Bart's ball signed, and Mr. Burns not knowing the names of the Simpsons family.
Ah, well, if it isn't the Simps!
Don't have much more to say, but I liked it. Dead Putting Society is a funny episode, particularly in watching Homer act like an overly competitive buffoon throughout the episode. His attempt to humiliate Ned comes to a comedic karma ending, in which he claims they both lost the bet and now have to mow each other's lawns in their wives' dresses, only for Ned to enjoy it and Homer to be the humiliated one. There's also some funny moments in Lisa training Bart for the golf tournament. It's not an amazing episode, but it is a funny one all the same. There's a lot of funny jokes in this episode, and even some subtle commentary, such as when Mr. Burns has Smithers dispose of a huge quantity of food, as well as Kent Brockman doing a human interest story at the soup kitchen, primarily hoping to win an Emmy. I do think Bart is a bit too mean-spirited in the episode, however, implemented when he destroys Lisa's centerpiece, and, for a lot of the episode, doesn't regret it. But he does have an arc in the episode, giving money to the homeless guys he met, and seeing how badly he upset Lisa and apologising. A good episode overall. Bart the Daredevil is quite a funny and also emotionally gripping episode that shows how, despite getting easily annoyed by him, Homer, and also Lisa, do nonetheless care about Bart's safety, with Homer being willing to kill himself to show Bart the danger of jumping Springfield Gorge when nothing else works. Though this does result in Bart learning his lesson, Homer ends up inadvertently riding over the gorge anyway, and in comedically dark fashion, ends up falling down the gorge twice. And honestly, this never fails to crack me up. Many years before South Park took on the topic of censorship as a recurring theme, both on the small and big screen, The Simpsons managed to take it on in an interesting commentary with Itchy and Scratchy and Marge. As well as having a hilarious Psycho reference, the episode leans into the question if cartoons influence children to become violent, and also about the hypocrisy of trying to censor one form of art, but not another, shown in Marge getting Itchy and Scratchy toned down, but seeing David as a work of art. I like how even the toned down Itchy and Scratchy cartoons manage to be hilarious, and how this prompts the bored children to go outside, creating the illusion of a cheerful utopia. Ultimately, I conceive the episode's message to be about not censoring art because one person dislikes it, as this can start a chain of other people having art censored because they don't like it. And also something that, as mentioned before, South Park would go on to address many times. A very funny and thought-provoking episode. This was the first episode to guest star the late great Phil Hartman. Revisiting these episodes in order of air date reminds me of the comedic delivery Hartman brought to both Lionel Hutz and Troy McClure. And overall, this is a good episode with some funny moments, particularly in how Homer and Bart try to fabricate the truth for financial gain beyond Bart's medical bills, while Mr. Burns tries to fabricate the truth and ends up infuriating everyone, including Smithers.
You believed his cock and bull story?
And it's good to see Marge bring her moral compass to court, and the reconciliation between her and Homer at the end is a very emotional one. Good episode. This is an interesting episode that maintains both humour and poignancy in Homer trying to make the most of the potential final hours of his life, along with the hilarious ending in which he vows to make the most of his life, but simply does what he was doing before. A good episode. When I think of Simpsons episodes that show why Homer and Marge's relationship feels genuine, one of the first to come to mind is The Way We Was. The episode shows that, despite Homer's flaws, he really loves and respects Marge. I especially love the detail of Marge teaching Homer French, and then after the prom, he fixes her dress with the corsage he bought her, saying, "Poor vous," which ended up becoming a common saying in their relationship going forward, as well as Close to You essentially becoming their song. Like Artie, Homer loves Marge. Unlike Artie, Homer respects Marge, which is something I feel later writers would misunderstand. And the episode has a lot of really good jokes. The reference to Siskel and Ebert is hilarious, and my favourite jokes are when Homer says,
English? Who needs that? I'm never going to England.
As well as his quote-unquote rebuttal. A very funny and also emotionally gripping episode, and one you ought to love if you were to understand how legitimate Homer and Marge's love for each other is. This is a really good episode. I like the arc Homer has in stealing cable, only for Lisa to convince him not to watch the fight at the end, and then cut off the cable connection. A really good episode. Principal Charming manages to have both humour and heart. It has funny references to Vertigo and Gone with the Wind, but it also gives character development to both Principal Skinner and Patty. Despite Patty seeming unlikable, especially in ruining Selma's chance at marrying a co-worker, it is shown that she cares for her sister, passing up marrying Skinner due to the bond she has with Selma. Skinner accepts the situation, and humorously reasserts his authority over Bart. Good episode. This is a decent episode. My favourite joke is probably when Homer cries about not being able to find the Shelbyville orphanage. The design of the Homer is pretty creatively bizarre as well. With this said, the ending rubs me the wrong way. While Homer's car was a disaster, Herb did ask Homer to design the car, and never oversaw any of the design blueprints, only to then blame him when he goes bankrupt. And this does bring the episode down for me, though it's far from a bad episode. I do think the ending to this episode is poignant, though I do think the point about Santa's little helper being reckless is dragged out for too long. Good episode overall though. Old Money is a very emotionally gripping episode. The relationship between Grandpa and Bee is very touching, and her death is very sad. While the episode does have a lot of funny jokes, as you'd expect from The Simpsons, it has quite a serious angle, and a poignant ending in which Homer stops Grandpa from gambling our money away, and Grandpa instead uses the money to repair the retirement home, renaming the dining room in her honour. Really good episode. This is a really good episode. I like the humour that comes in Homer getting stuck in the water slide and trying to lose weight as a result of it, and how it leads to him discovering Marge's old paintings of Ringo Starr, which prompts Lisa to suggest Marge go to a painting class where her artwork proves successful. When Mr. Burns asks Marge to paint a picture of him for an upcoming museum wing, she becomes frustrated by his personality and the way he speaks to her family. Despite becoming demotivated and unsure of how to make him beautiful, she finds a decades-late letter from Ringo Starr, praising her artwork, and prompting her to continue, leading to quite an interesting message about what the portrait shows. I also really like Ringo Starr's two scenes, and how well incorporated they are into the story, as well as his guest appearance. Though, having grown up with the classic era of Thomas the Tank Engine, of which he narrated the first two seasons, it's hard not to imagine him finishing one of his lines with, "said Thomas."
Yeah, said Thomas.
Lisa's Substitute is a very funny and poignant episode. The plotline about Mr. Bergstrom being Lisa's substitute teacher manages to have a lot of poignancy to it, while the plotline about Bart wanting to be class president has a lot of funny jokes. And I like how the two plotlines come together at the end, when Homer consoles both Lisa and Bart over the negative outcomes. Mr. Bergstrom is a great one-off character, shown to care about his students, particularly Lisa, and his note to her before he leaves is especially poignant. Dustin Hoffman brings a lot to his vocal performance, and it even comes with a funny Graduate reference. Sex! Now that I've got your attention, watch Lisa Substitute. It's great. The War of the Simpsons juggles a plotline of Marge trying to fix her and Homer's marriage, and one of Bart and Lisa taking advantage of Grandpa taking care of them. And both are very well done. The setup in which Homer gets drunk at a house party is genuinely funny, particularly when Homer tells off a guest he doesn't know, and the end of the party, where Dr. Hibbert tells Marge what to do if she wants Homer to survive the night. And Homer's response to Marge sharing her humiliation. When Marge signs her and Homer up for marriage counselling, Homer tries to seize the opportunity to go fishing, but eventually lets a huge catfish go to show his love for her. While Homer and Marge's story has an emotionally gripping end, Bart, Lisa and Grandpa's has a funny twist, in which after Bart and Lisa trick him into letting them have a house party, he tricks them into cleaning the house by pretending to cry. To some extent, all the characters win in their own way in the end. This is a good episode. It's not quite as funny as other episodes, but it has some funny jokes, and it does have an intriguing message about learning to share. Blood Feud has a lot of really funny moments, including when the family debate the lesson they learned by the end. But my favourite moment is when Homer pretends to be Mr. Burns to get back the letter Bart sent, and forgetting his first name. It may well be the most comedically layered scene in The Simpsons at this point. There's the giant painting atop the post office, Homer using a fake voice, like that's going to make any difference. The fake voice not even sounding like Mr. Burns. He doesn't know his boss's name. He continues to use the fake voice in spite of it. The delivery of,
I don't know.
He blames Bart. 7 jokes in just 15 seconds. I also like how even though Smithers stands by Mr. Burns a lot of the time, he draws the line at allowing him to have Homer beaten in response to his angry letter, reminding him that the Simpsons saved his life, prompting Burns to send them an Olmec head. Really good end to the season. An improvement over Season 1, and with many considering the golden age of The Simpsons to be Seasons 3 to 8, I think optimism is the best state of mind for what's to come. So, here we have the only Simpsons episode to be banned from streaming services and DVD release as of 2019. And honestly, whether you believe Michael Jackson to be guilty or not, I don't think the episode should be swept under the rug, especially when A Bug's Life is on Disney+, and we all know who voiced the villain in that movie. But looking at the quality of the episode, yeah, it's a great one. It has hilarious moments throughout, but also a certain amount of poignancy. And it brings its 2 plotlines about Homer, quote-unquote, meeting Michael Jackson, and Bart forgetting Lisa's birthday together, in which, quote-unquote, Michael helps Bart write a song for Lisa, which genuinely slaps. This is a funny episode. Lisa's determination to tell the truth is particularly admirable, and the episode has a lot of really funny moments, the best ones being the taxi mix-up, Homer and Bart enjoying the perks of the expenses paid, and Bart riding in the cockpit. Another really good episode. An episode that shows that even though Homer acts like he resents Ned, he does secretly ultimately care about him, going from wishing for his store to be closed to actively seeking people to go to it. A really funny and heartwarming episode overall. While I do think it takes slightly too long to get into the main plot, I do like this episode overall. Joe Mantegna makes his first appearance as Fat Tony, and certainly brings a sense of comedic threat. A detail that stood out to me on my most recent rewatch was how Principal Skinner advises Bart to make a game out of licking envelopes, which foreshadows the way he stayed sane while trapped under newspapers. A very nice connection. We get an amusing A-plot in which Homer saves the plant by luck, only to wonder if he really is a hero, which comes to a funny ending. We also get a good B-plot about Bart and Milhouse, which comes to a heartwarming end where Marge defends Bart, prompting Milhouse's mum Luann to let them play together again. 2 good plotlines in an overall good episode. It's a good episode that humanises Krusty and establishes his backstory, including his complicated relationship with his father, which does come to an emotionally gripping conclusion in the end. The episode also manages to have a lot of funny moments, particularly Krusty trying to be serious, but the spotlight not doing any favours. Both a funny and heartwarming episode. It's the second Treehouse of Horror, and this one is an improvement on the first. I like the way the segments all tie together, and they all have really good jokes in them. Lisa's Nightmare features some really funny moments. The the standouts being Maggie making a wish that seems like it's for a limo, only for it to simply be a delivery for a new dummy. And the ending in which Homer wishes for a turkey sandwich, which turns out to be a little dry, and gives the paw to Ned, who gets rid of the aliens and becomes celebrated. I also like the idea that everyone becomes tired of seeing The Simpsons everywhere, which seems like a subtle allegory for how big The Simpsons was at the time. Bart's nightmare is also very funny, with the highlights being Edna changing the answers in the test to accommodate Bart's, and the reconciliation between Homer and Bart at the end being the thing that woke Bart up from his quote-unquote nightmare. Homer's nightmare, while not as funny, is an entertaining story, with the twist about Burns' head really being stitched to Homer's neck being very funny. It seems as though the Treehouse of Horror episodes are upping themselves at this point. We'll see if this continues in the Season 4 ranking. A funny and poignant episode that shows Homer try to be a good father to Lisa, with her realising just how far he's willing to go for her to keep a pony. It also manages to work in a really funny Godfather reference. It's not one of my favourite episodes, but still, there goes a good episode from one of the best seasons The Simpsons ever had. A funny episode that gives Homer a good character arc in realising he needs to support Bart, even if Bart didn't choose his go-kart to race in. It also has a good Ben-Hur reference in it. Flaming Moe's has a lot of great elements to it. The setup surrounding the titular drink, and how Homer invented it, is both creative and funny. And the episode features a lot of great moments from here, including Edna drunkenly stealing the drumsticks, Homer's sarcastic, happy monologue, Homer being too upset to eat and going to Moe's, Bart's botched, huge ass prank call, and Homer's manic monologue about the secret ingredient. The Flaming Moe's song is quite nice to listen to, and I like Moe's arc in the episode. While he is quite selfish, he does eventually come to acknowledge the drink as Homer's invention in the end, serving him one free of charge. Great episode. Other than the fantastic Land of Chocolate fantasy, the episode is never hilarious, though it does have good jokes, such as the one about Lenny's smile. And I do like Mr. Burns' arc of buying back the plant upon realising his former employees no longer fear him. It's far from the best of the show, but it is a good episode overall. A very funny and heartwarming episode. It not only manages to have a lot of funny moments, including Homer's reaction to Smithers' questions at the job interview, and when he accidentally spoils the ending of The Empire Strikes Back, but it also shows how dedicated Homer is to providing for Marge and Bart, with the poor view from The Way We Was coming back. A great episode overall. Radio Bart is a great episode that has hilarious moments throughout, including, but certainly not limited to, Bart's free birthday sundae, the Neapolitan ice cream scene, and several of Bart's microphone pranks. I also think the episode's commentary on people trying to profit off tragic stories is well handled, with the town trying to profit off what is seemingly an awful event. And yeah, it's just a great episode overall. While I do wish the B-plot with Marge and Bart had more to it, I do like the A-plot, and Homer's arc of putting Lisa's love for him before money. The episode is also home to good jokes, particularly people skipping church to watch the game, with one of the few attendees leaving when being reminded of it. This is a good episode. While it's not particularly funny, it is satisfying to see Marge take a break from the stress of looking after her family. Bart the Lover is an episode that shows just how well The Simpsons can balance comedy and poignancy. The plotline about Bart tricking Edna into thinking a man loves her starts off as a cruel prank, but it then turns into a beautiful closure, in which Bart works with his family to write a final letter that makes her continue to feel loved. If I were to mention how good the recurring voice actors were all the time, I'd probably repeat myself a lot, but I will point out two specific vocal performances in this episode that stand out. One is the late great Marcia Wallace's Edna, who shows the depression and loneliness that plagues the character, and earned a much-deserved Emmy for her performance. The other is Dan Castellaneta, who was always fantastic as Homer, and in this episode, really shows the comedic anger he endures trying to build a dog kennel. And on that note, the side plot in which Homer tries to cut back on swearing is frequently hilarious, though Ned Flanders without a moustache looks slightly uncanny. Ugh. A fantastic episode, and one of the best of Season 3. The first episode to beat The Cosby Show in the ratings, Homer at the Bat is a classic episode, with constant hilarious moments and memorable celebrity cameos. Unlike a lot of modern episodes, where the celebrity cameos are shoved down our throats, these cameos were actually worked into the story, with Mr. Burns hiring real-life softball players to play for his team. What truly makes the episode great in my opinion, is Homer's ambition to play with his magic bat, as well as how he wins the game at the end, which I won't spoil. and also how the softball players end up dropping out, with incidents including Ken Griffey Jr. developing gigantism, and Joe Canseco saving a woman's possessions from a burning building, individually. A classic episode with a great amount of humour. I like how this episode puts Bart and Lisa in opposite situations, Bart bringing orders to the school, and Lisa rebelling. The twist about the teachers requiring books for answers, and then stressing when the books are stolen, is very funny. And it has a heartwarming ending, in which Bart sacrifices his credibility to prevent Lisa getting expelled, and she consoles him by resuming playing her saxophone. Really good episode. This episode is home to a lot of funny moments, including the fantasy of King Homer, and Homer not knowing Lisa's birthday. But the standouts are Kent Brockman winning the lottery, and the Clockwork Orange reference, and the flip side to it. Even if the family's treatment of Santa's Little Helper is a bit too mean-spirited, considering the twisted stomach wasn't his fault, the episode does end on a heartwarming reconciliation between him and Bart. While Homer is unnecessarily hostile at the beginning, the rest of the episode is pretty great, with one of my favourite jokes being Homer having to drive past miles of awful smells. And it's the show's introduction to Lurleen Lumpkin, who is a sympathetic character, seeking to launch a singing career, but also hoping to become Homer's lover, mostly due to him being one of, if not the first, men to show respect for her. Homer's conflict about remaining Lurleen's manager, even when tension rises and it puts his marriage on thin ice, is a well-executed one. And his decision to quit and return to Marge is a heartwarming one, and one that Lurleen, through a new song, reluctantly accepts. And on that topic, Lurleen's songs are all fantastic, two of which were written by her voice actress Beverly D'Angelo, whose voice performance and singing are superb. Kelsey Grammer returns as Sideshow Bob, and does a great job conveying his comedic insanity. And overall, it is a frequently hilarious episode, with some of my favourite moments being Sideshow Bob and Krusty's argument at the Emmys, the former's sarcasm about MacGyver being good, Bart trying to explain the problem to Homer before succeeding in explaining it to Marge, and the way Chief Wiggum inadvertently catches Bob at the end. A really funny episode, and a great second chapter in Sideshow Bob's character arc. This is a good episode. It has several funny moments, such as Homer telling Bart to give up if something's too hard, as well as Lisa mentioning the school bus not having seatbelts, and also accidentally killing Spinal Tap. Don't have much more to say, but I like it. Bart's Friend Falls in Love has one of the best openings in the entire series. A parody of Raiders of the Lost Ark, Bart steals Homer's change and has to escape as Homer chases him down, culminating in Bart escaping on the bus and Homer yelling gibberish with the rake. Possibly the best cultural reference in the series. And yet, the rest of the episode doesn't feel connected to it, or even live up to it. It's a good episode, and there are other funny jokes in it, such as Milhouse's quote about Romeo and Juliet, but nothing lives up to the brilliance of the opening, and that is a shame. An improvement on Oh Brother Where Art Thou. While Homer does still get a lot of unnecessary flack from Herb, the episode does come to a more satisfying end, where Herb, finally, oversees the invention himself, regains his fortune, and reconciles with his brother. It also has a lot of funny moments, with Homer's award show being a funny parody of award shows, along with Homer in the vibrating chair providing a great 2001 A Space Odyssey reference, and some very funny translations on the baby translator. A really good episode overall. An even better season than the last two. I guess we'll see if Season 4 continues to improve an already great series.